sure you have heard about it, right? They do surgeries at such a low cost that they hit headlines around the world in a very big way. In fact, they have been recognized for what they have been doing around the world. C.K. Prahlad, I think, wrote a case study in his School of Business in Michigan, right? And what is it all about? Look at the number of surgeries that they have conducted. Amazing numbers, right? This is from their annual report. Now, how did they manage to do it? What it means is, it's not just you need to have computers, you need to have an analytical mind to make things happen, right? You may not have the data, but if you can take the insights, act upon the insights, and then make things happen, that's when you can scale. This is innovation to scale. But then, this was using conventional instrumentation. There's something over the horizon that's coming up. I don't know if you heard about Alphago or DeepMind. This is an AI program from Google, and they are collaborating with the eye hospital in, I think, UK, to quickly find out who all have cataract, right? And with the higher accuracy. In fact, AI in the medical diagnosis space is going to be such a hit that many of the practicing doctors might go jobless. And this is a big challenge. Why is it a challenge? If you don't add value, you're out of business. It's as simple as that. IBM's Watson Analytics is almost in all fields, you see that there's an application being used, right?
Close fast.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So I have another 6 slides to go, and I'll quickly finish it off. Yeah. So what do we see from here? A lot of data is getting collected in Arvind Hospital, but then there's so much more to be done. Let's take the world of Uber. What you see is a map of how Uber collects data in whichever way possible, so they can manage the reality and in real time, okay? In fact, recently Uber app has been found to be collecting data even when you turn it off, which means they are stealing data from your mobile, even if you don't really agree to it. That's the desperation to which they want to go, just so they can be ahead of the competition, right? And look at what they are doing with the big data that they collect. They look at, they want to hyper-visualize in real time what kind of services they are offering, where all it happens, and by the way, this is New York City, and all those data points that you see is kind of collected through to represent how the density of the traffic services being offered are, how the users are taking it and whatnot, right? And it's not just about
just
the moment
faster, 245 suggests.
Yeah, 1 more minute. Yeah. It's not just about the services, but it's also about how the partners, the drivers are faring, right? Now, having looked at what the drivers do, people want to get to offer better services. In fact, today in Chennai, if you ask between Ola and Uber, which is better, people say Uber because of the courtesies extended by the driver. Let's look at the big thing that's happening now, GAFA. I don't know if you've kind of seen this magazine called Swarajya, and there's a very interesting article on this thing called GAFA. Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. These 4 giants really hold the world data. It's a huge gold mine. And they know anything and everything about you, and they can predict what you're going to do next. And that's what is the big thing about selling it to the marketing people, right? Now, if you were to closely observe, what is it that they are deploying? They're using big data analytics, combining it with machine learning. So that's something which we, in Indian industries, we need to leverage in a very big way. Okay, India is catching on. Where is it catching on? You have a website, india.data.gov.in, which tries to collect data from the government departments, and it's there for you to use. Have you all thought about it? There's only one last point which I want to make, and that is, while in India we have the largest talent pool of qualified, professional, big data analytics, and AI professionals, we are no way solving our problems. But we have a huge challenge, and the huge challenge comes from the global Chinese expertise. In fact, America is getting threatened in the patent war in the space of artificial intelligence by Chinese. The number of patents filed by Chinese scientists are much more than Americans in this space of artificial intelligence. If they take over, I don't know where we are going to be. On that note, I close, leave you with a lot of food for thought to understand that There's so much more that we have as opportunities, so much more that we have as challenges in order to be able to close the technology war that's going on around the world, and so much more that we can do to scale up, right? And innovate to scale is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan. I think it's a good realization that how data will help you in scale. So sometimes we create a fear of data. To me, artificial intelligence is a way one can look at it in positive manner, how better service one can provide to the customer. And if we start adopting artificial intelligence more from a perspective of the way examples have been given on Uber or any other service which gives a better service, better productivity, better output, and in that regard, better medical services rather than medical doctor being threatened for their job to be there or not there, if they are being supported by saying that artificial intelligence helps them in a better diagnostic for the patient and you have a more accuracy in the treatment, I think that's the way we can engage the community. By threatening, sometimes we are disengaging the community with the artificial intelligence engine. So I think that's where my suggestion is that in the news articles and everywhere, it's getting threatened that it's going to get the job going out or doctors will run out of their business. I think so many errors which happens today, if they can reduce the error rate by 20, 30, 40% using AI, I think the better healthcare can be there. Thank you to bring this to the attention of this forum, that this cannot be left unattended in any of the businesses, and this is a core part of the business which we need to look at it. Thank you, Mr. Mohan. And at this point in time, I want to invite Sudhir for sharing his thought.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. And Vanakkam Madras. I'm sure I can use the term Madras with the Madras Management Association, maybe not with others. But Madras is how I used to know Madras 2 decades ago when I was to live here. So Madras it is. Nice to be back here. A few terms. You know the topic for the day is innovating for scale. The 3 terms which sort of jump out and hit your eye here. Innovation and can you just have my deck on the screen, please? Yeah. So 3 terms which jump out and hit the eye here, innovation, scale, and status quo, right? So that's the topic for the day. So let me start with the second one, which is scale. All of us here know about how good scale is. All of us who are here are either managers or leaders in certain organizations, or we are running our own businesses, right? So we all know the importance of size. We all know the importance of scale, and we all know the importance of growth, right? So all the people here would know the importance of growth over last year, growth over last quarter. And if you are in the telecom industry, like I am, it's always growth over last hour. So we are measured by how we are growing, hour on hour, right? So the importance of growth is not lost on us. However, and I was very interested when Mr. Rajendra Singh was talking about how development, GDP, is of lesser consequences. I won't say no consequence, but of lesser consequence, unless you can dovetail it with what it means to the country, what it means to society, what it means to our culture in general. So some way I'll try to see if I can link what I'm talking with the greater good which we could do for the country, right? So let's jump into this term straight up, which is that of scale. Yeah, got it. So as all of us are aware, businesses, industries are moving from being resource driven, from being manpower driven, from being material driven to being information driven. Am I right? So I saw a lot of show of hands when Mr. Mohan was talking about people who know big data and machine learning and stuff like that. So glad to know that all of you are well informed of such things. But all of us in the room would be the first to acknowledge that things are changing. Companies which are becoming big, companies which are making a big, organizations which are making a big mark in the world today are people who are depending on data or on knowledge. Some bit of statistics here, top 5, the market cap of top 5 countries globally is approximately a quarter of US GDP. Stunning. The GAFA, which Mr. Mohan was talking about, actually, and one more, add to that, will actually account for 25% of US's GDP. Not only that, 4 out of these 10 companies actually account for 1 billion people who are on its platform. Mind-boggling. 1 out of 7 crores, 15% of the world is actually on these guys' platforms. So that's the importance of size and scale. The other thing is that the way things are changing and the way the scale was earlier and the way scale is now is again changing. A company which was Microsoft, for long the most valued company in the world, for long the richest, the owner of Microsoft was the richest man in the world. That was valued at only $500 million, 11 years after it first had its IPO. Take Facebook, which debuted at about 100 billion, right? Within 8 years after it was first founded. And 100 billion has gone to approximately around 500, 600 billion as we speak, right? So all we're trying to say here is that we are in a situation, we are in a construct, we are in an environment where the bigger organizations, the bigger thoughts are the things which are influencing us. I'm sure there's nobody here who has not been deeply influenced by Google. Actually, much of my information comes from Google. I'm sure there's nobody here whose child has not used Amazon to pick up his or her latest gadget. So all these organizations are touching our lives, and that's where it becomes important. That's where you get influenced as a society, when these large organizations are in a position to actually influence the way you and I live. Busy slide, and I'm sure you can't make too much out of it. I hope some of you would have heard of this term, Gartner hype cycle. Show of hands, please. 5, 6, okay. So maybe I'll just spend a couple of minutes on this here. Gartner hype cycle, just to put it in layman terms, is actually a graphic representation of technology, the way it moves, and the way the technology moves from, let's say, from the early adopters, and how it moves to, let's say, a sort of a maturity. Before coming to the maturity stage, what are the stages it goes through before the technology is very completely adopted by society? So, to answer your question in terms of what sort of trends will influence our lives in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, there's a fair representation of what Gartner thinks. I'm sure all of us know who Gartner is. There's a fair representation of the technologies which will influence our lives going forward. You might not be able to see too much here, but I would advise you to just Google it and check it out, right? Let me just, I don't know if you can see it well, but let's say the one at the right-hand corner is virtual reality. What we're trying to say is that virtual reality will influence our lives in the next 2 to 5 years. When I say influence, it will be accepted as in the societal way that we live. The virtual reality will become a part of us. Following that would be concepts of augmented reality. The difference between virtual reality and augmented reality is basically that the augmented reality takes a physical environment and overlays a layer on top of that, which is a computer-aided layer. However, virtual reality is all artificial, all simulated, and it is putting you in a simulated atmosphere. Gaming is one example which is obvious, right? The other technologies, the other large-scale technologies which is going to influence you sooner than later are things like blockchain, right? I'm sure you would have heard about it. I don't have too much time to talk about it now, but things like blockchain, things like autonomous vehicles, things like machine learning, which we heard about earlier, the IoT platforms that we talked about, these are the technologies which are at various stages of getting talked about. First of all, the technology comes in, which is at the beginning. Then it gets hyped up by the media.
So just next 2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes? Wow, okay. Yeah, so these are the technologies which is going to inherently and explicitly affect our lives going forward. So let me just skip to saying that all these technologies that I've touched upon will come into being, will be adopted by us only if there's a certain raw material available with us, that is bandwidth, right? All of us are aware that all these things are bandwidth heavy, right? And that's the role which Reliance, which Jio is trying to bridge, to bring all that you saw, all the technologies which are going to influence our lives. Is it all theory, or is it actually going to see the light of day by ensuring that the common man is given a chance to actually experience it? I'll come to the last part, which is the last term that I was talking about, which is status quo. Status quo in the context of telecom, in the context of where Jio first came in. We had extremely high data rates. Anybody who's spent a fortune on data would know that data, when we first came in about a year and a half ago, was being costed at 250 rupees per GB, right? And today, today it costs you less than 3 rupees a GB, right? Earlier, you used to pay for voice. Today, you don't pay for voice. Whether it's Jio, whether it's any other operator that you use, you don't pay for voice. So this is the context in which we came in. This was a status quo that we came in. Network coverage was poor. 2G, 3G was rampant. 4G, which is actually the protocol on which data can actually be properly used, was really not there. And 45 crore Indians who still today, out of 120 crore Indians, 45 crore Indians still don't have access to data, still use their feature phones, still use their, the push button telephones, as they call it, the button telephones, and therefore they have no access to data. So that is the next thing which Jio is planning to, which has Jio has entered, where we actually brought out a device which, and here I touch upon the social aspect of it. Here is a device which is actually effectively free to the customer. These 45 crore Indians actually can avail a device which is effectively free. You pay 1,500 rupees, after 3 years you get it back. The important point here, and the way it is going to affect the Indians in general, are that people who have been using feature phones, who have no access to data, currently will be able to access any data that you can talk about. Even the Facebook that Mr. Mohan was talking about will be available in the so-called poor man's phone, which is a feature phone. So at 1,500 rupees deposit, so to speak, effectively free, you'll be able to access this internet. This is not a sales pitch. All I'm trying to say is that the way data, the way change is happening, the way change is being taken advantage of by organizations like Jio and many others is phenomenal. And finally, when this change is brought to the common man, and he's able to access entertainment, knowledge, and music and health services on his internet devices at literally no cost at all. That is when I think, like Dr. Rajendra was saying, our real purpose would be served, and the common man will be benefited. So that's all I had to say, and under pressure of time, I think I'll have to close my small talk here and conclude that innovation and big change will happen, and it'll only be progressive if it happens. If it ensures that the common man is benefited in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudhir. Sure. Of connecting that how usage of technology can scale up the operations substantially faster and impacting the large people, connecting the end customer and technology, and driving the value to the customer. So thank you, Sudhir, for bringing to the attention that technology is a center space where the change will be there, and that can be used for scalability. So at this point in time, few questions. One question which comes to me, numeracy, that's an important area of skill development for future Indians. What can be done in India for numeracy at scale? This is asked by Jyotsna from TCS. Any one of the panel member would like to answer this question on numeracy? Is anything has been done on numeracy at an India level? I know many organizations like Teach India are doing a lot of work in this area, along with the government initiative, which is there in many states. So these initiatives are run by the state governments and run by the few of the NGOs, where we say, if you combine NGO and government and corporate together, the three triangle, which is a triad of change, numeracy, a lot of work is being done. But I think a a single organization doing, or Pratham is also doing a lot of job in this area. So this is what I know. Where is Josna? Just. Yeah.
Yeah. Quickly, I just want to share with you all. You would have heard about the Super 30 group, which kind of gets trained for IIT entrance exam in Bihar. And it has been successfully being done by this gentleman for the past several years. He's kind of become a big hit internationally. What's important is to replicate his techniques across the board, across the whole country. Unfortunately, the Department of Education of the Ministry of HRD is not really revamping. I think they are in the process of revamping the entire syllabus. What's critical is this thing called STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, along with problem solving. I don't know if you have noticed, the Vice President of Singapore had come and given a talk at Delhi where Prime Minister Modi was hearing him. And this is exactly what he told, STEM plus PS, problem solving. If this can be scaled up across board, across the entire country, then the skill development that you're talking about can be easily achieved. I think there's a lot of steps underway for that.
Thank you. There are two questions to Rajendra Kumarji. What challenges he faced in his journey of implementing water, and is next for going to be of on water? What is his view on it?
You know, the always challenging or challenge come from the government. When I create the first water body completed, so government of Rajasthan say, this rainwater is my state water. You can't stop this water. So they filed the case against me, Irrigation Drainage Act 1954, Section 55 and Section 58. So 377 cases filed against me. But you know, this is a great country. One day, the President of India say, oh, one river, Arvari, is flowing. So I can see that. Finally decide, the President of India, who can stop him? So he came and he meet to the people of that region. And he told, if the India make a self-sufficient country in water, so this is the only solution what this community done in this river basin. So the all case gone away in a one night. And you know, yes, the Third World War, water war is start. The 2 years before, in the month of October, the UN invite me in Ankara, Turkey. There UNCCD 12. The all minister of this world gathered there, and they give to me, I can teach them what is the way we can combating desertification. And we make a reverse migration. So the two tasks they give to my lecture, and 2 lectures there. The first lecture when I completed, the cabinet secretary come from the Syria. He say, sir, your speech is very good, but you not mention our crisis of my country facing the crisis of water. So due to the water, my country is displaced, but you not speak a single word. So I told, my dear, I am not a professor. The professor can speak, and they can speak anywhere in the world. I can't speak. I am a practitioner. So what I do, I can speak. So I speak my experience. So he say, please sir, आप हमारा देश देखने चलिए. हम तो सब उजड़ गए, वार हो रहा है, अटैक हो रहा है. तो मैंने कहा चलता हूँ. मुझे 3 दिन में विदाउट वीजा उन्होंने टर्की से, अंकारा से, ऊपर से जहाँ ये अल्टाटूट डैम बने यूफ्रेटिस रिवर पर, टर्की पे जब पैसा आया, सारा यूफ्रेटिस रिवर का फ्लो, they stop in Turkey and no flow in Syria.
So he flown from Turkey to Syria
Yes.
Sudankara, within 3 days, so that because of the demand, what the problem statement of water is. So I think he want to highlight that it's such a critical issue.
No. I am highlighting that Syria war is not a religious war.
Okay.
The Syria war is the water war.
Is a water war.
Always the large dam create the problem for the low income smaller communities.
Okay.
So the large dam create a
That's the
world
first
water war.
Thank you. That's a very important point. Syria is not a religious war. Mohanji, there's a question for you.
Yeah, I'll read out the question by Mr. Colin, Manager, Business Development from Cognizant. You're here, Mr. Colin? Yeah. So the question is, what is your view on our central government's in implementing policies for mandatory linking of Aadhaar in each and every aspect of the customer's profile with banks, insurance, etc. What is our government trying to achieve through this initiative? I have 3 responses to it. I just happened to run around and suddenly I came across this particular issue. I think response number 1 is, I think you should grab this magazine, and this is all about Aadhaar. This is the current issue of Swarajya, and it says Aadhaar explained. So get hold of that. Okay,
answer.
Point 1. Point 2, I don't know if you have noticed in the WhatsApp, there is a video that's going around about how I think a Fox News team managed to take 2 mobile phones, they switched out the Wi-Fi, went around about 15 miles or so, came back, and then found that Google was dumping their entire movement, even though the mobile was switched off virtually in the airplane mode. Okay, 2 mobile phones. What does that mean? It means that Google has everything that it needs to know. And the third issue that I want to share with you is this. Recently, there was, I think, a challenge. A BBC correspondent was in a Chinese city, and he was told, you try to sneak out of this place. After you safely ensconce yourself in some place, you kind of hide some place, tell us, and let's see how long it will take for us to track you down, right? So he did that, and he was not hiding in a place, but he was moving fast. And within 7 minutes, the police in the Chinese city could track him to where he was, right? So what does it mean? It means only one thing. We are stupid to make a big deal and fuss about Aadhaar because we can't trust our own government. We can't trust our fellow Indians. We are such naked idiots before Google. That's what GAFA is all about. Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon knows much more than what our central government knows. The unfortunate part is, we Indians are so suspicious of each other, we can't trust each other, that whatever the central government collects as data, some amongst us will leak it out. That's the problem.
Okay. Yeah, so one more question. Just to
Yeah, this question is from Mr. Ranganath, if you're there. So the question really is that with so much advances happening in the Indian technology space, then why isn't not really touch the education space in a better and more comprehensive manner than what it has currently? There's hope, Mr. Ranganathan, because as you'd be aware, education would obviously mean it's not just dumping of homework to the child at the end of the day. It's an interactive sessions which need to happen. So for this, huge amount of bandwidth is required, and India is prepared to make that investment. Indian companies have made that investment. Fiberization has happened, and you'll soon find that, in fact, Jio itself has tied up with 700, 800 universities to ensure that the transfer of data, the transfer of knowledge happens in a very efficient manner comparable with anywhere in the world. So that's one thing. On the other hand, let me also just reiterate a conversation which was happening with Mr. Madhavan of Cognizant Foundation, where he said that, and this is what technology is really important. This is what technology should do to help the common man's life. He was talking upon of an instance where the Cognizant organization had tied up with a hardware manufacturer and had a text-to-speech converter for the blind students of Tamil Nadu and South India. For me, that is